everybody, this is Mrs. Migdal, and today I'm going to show you how to read a poem. So as you watch this video, I'm going to show you the 4 steps that we want you to take with every poem that we read, and in the second half of the video, I'm going to run through a poem using these 4 steps, so you sort of have an idea of what we expect you to do. So we came up with this idea because when I used to give students a poem like this, they would read it, they'd underline some stuff, but they really didn't have a good method for attacking a poem, because a poem can be pretty challenging, and it's important that we try to figure out what a reader, what the poet is trying to tell us. So here are some logical steps, and the first thing I want you to think about is this phrase: never read poetry fast. You got to read a poem more than one time, or you're not going to get to the heart of what it means, because poets use figurative language, poets use imagery, and they do that to give you some kind of big idea. So it takes a few readings. So while the phrase never read poetry is fast, more important are the letters that each of those words start with. Never read poetry fast is a mnemonic device. I want you to think of N, R, P, and F. Those are our 4 steps, and you can remember those by thinking never read poetry fast. I actually would like it if you'd write those letters at the top of each of your poems so you remember to take each of those steps. And let's look at them. Step 1 is notice the structure. How many stanzas and verses does this poem have? What's the title? And is there a rhyme scheme? So this first step, you do this even before you read the poem. You're just looking at it, looking at that structure to see if there are any clues from the poet to help us understand it and to get our brain thinking about it. Step 2 is read. And this is just the first read of the poem. And you're going to read it thinking about punctuation, but also just being aware of your inner voice. What are your first thoughts about this poem? Don't try to understand it all. Just kind of get the feel the rhyme if there is rhyme. Think about the words that jump out at you. What are your first impressions? Step 3 is the P, paraphrase or summarize. This is going to be your second read on the poem, and as you read it, we want you to think about this phrase: somebody wanted but so. And that's going to help you figure out who the speaker is in your poem and what's happening to them in this poem. So you're kind of focusing now on what the poem is about. And you'll write that down. And then the 4th step is the F, and it's find terms and theme. That's where you're going to use those poetry notes that you just took, and we're going to have you go back and think about what techniques, what poetic devices did the poet use to help you get to their message, to help them. Did they use similes, metaphors, imagery? What did they do, and why did they use those to help you understand their poem? So now we're actually going to read a poem together. And I'm going to run through the 4 steps so you understand it. We're going to read this poem called The Jigsaw Puzzle by Russell Hoban. And you may stop this video as often as you need to really understand the poem and to write down the things that we do as we go. Because the most important thing is that you do understand these 4 steps. Okay, step 1 is notice the structure. Remember, we do this before we even actually read the poem. So you may stop in a minute. I want you to stop the video to see if you can answer these 2 questions right here. How many stanzas and verses does this poem have? And is there a rhyme scheme? Label it. Go ahead and stop the poem. See if you can, stop the video, see if you can answer both of those questions. I'll be here when you come back and I'll give you the answers. So, how many stanzas are there? 3. How many verses are there? 12. And what is our rhyme scheme? Our rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, because I see treasure rhymes with pleasure, so both of those are A, and start rhymes with part. And I haven't even read the poem yet. I'm just looking at the last word because that's where a lot of rhyme is in poem. And again, others rhyme with brothers, and maybe rhymes with baby. So again, I know that this stanza is also A-B-A-B. And on rhymes with gone. And do rhymes with to. So all of my stanzas are A, B, A, B. So I can put that right there. A, B, A, B. Good. Step 2 is read the poem. First, read the poem according to punctuation. Okay, so here we go. My first read on this poem. Jigsaw Puzzle by Russell Hoban. My beautiful pictures of pirates and treasure is spoiled. And almost I don't want to start to put it together. I've lost all the pleasure I used to find in it. There's one missing part. I know that they're missing. They lost it, the others, the last time they played with my puzzle. And maybe there's more than one missing. Along with the brothers and sisters who borrow my toys, there's the baby. There's a hole in the ship or the sea that it sails on. And I said to my father, well, what shall I do? It isn't the same now that some of it's gone. He said, put it together. The world's like that too. So if you noticed, when I read this, I didn't stop at the end of each verse. I stopped at the punctuation. So the first punctuation isn't until after the word spoiled. So I read it, my beautiful picture of pirates and treasure is spoiled. And then the next punctuation is after together. And almost I don't want to start to put it together. I've lost all the pleasure I used to find in it. There's one missing part. It's important that you think about that punctuation, because if you don't and you stop at each verse, it might not make sense. So the first things that stick out to me the first time I read it are things like pirates and treasure, brothers and sisters. Oops, let's see if I can get my highlighter going here. One missing part. I know that this is called Jigsaw Puzzle. So I'm already kind of getting an image of this. I also see the dad is in here, the father. So I see family members, I see puzzle pieces, I see brothers and sisters and babies playing with it. So I've got some things maybe jumping out at me on this second read. So now step 3 is the paraphrase or summarize. So I want to go back and think of this. Somebody wanted but so. All right, I'm going to read it again. And as I read it, I want you to think about somebody wanted but so. My beautiful pictures of pirates and treasure is spoiled. And almost I don't want to start to put it together. I've lost all the pleasure I used to find in it. There's one missing part. I know that there's one missing. They lost it, the others, the last time they played with my puzzle. And maybe there's more than one missing. Along with the brothers and sisters who borrow my toys, there's the baby. There's a hole in the ship or the sea that it sails on. And I said to my father, well, what shall I do? It isn't the same now that some of it's gone. He said, put it together. The world's like that too. Okay, so I want you to stop the video and I want you to come over here on your document and I want you to see if you can figure out who is this somebody, who is the speaker? Is it an old man? Is it a dog? Is it a snowflake? Is it a person? And if so, how old are they? And what did this person want? And then the but and the so are if there's a problem of some sort. Okay? So see if you can do it. Turn it off and come back and I'll give you some answers. Okay, now my speaker, the person I think it is a speaker, might not be the same person you think it is. I think it's like a kid about 10 years old. Maybe a little older. And what did he wanted? He wanted to put the puzzle together. What kind of a puzzle? The pirate puzzle. But there is a missing piece because his siblings were playing with it. So he asks his dad for advice dad says to play with it anyway. It is still okay, even though it is missing a piece. Make sense? I think that's more or less what it's about. Did you get something like that? I hope you got something similar to that. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine, but if you want to stop the video here and write in what I wrote in, you're welcome to do that, because this can be a good model when you're looking at other poems. And finally, we come down to step 4, which is called Find the Terms and Theme. And we're never going to really ask you to go in and find things. We're always going to try and give you some guidance. So there'll be a box under the poem, and it'll ask you to find some things. So this one says, determine the message of the poem, which is, of course, the theme. We've talked about theme, but let's come down to this one first. Look for language and sound devices. So you did your poetry notes, and you can go back up and think about what they are. And here I have highlight 2 examples of alliteration. So if you want, a great thing to do would be to stop the video and see if you can find some alliteration. If you're not sure what it is, look back in your notes, and maybe the terms are sitting on your table. If you can find what alliteration is, stop, see if you can highlight 2 or 3 examples, and then come back and see if they match up with mine, okay? All right, stop the video. Okay, let's see if I can show you some alliteration. So, picture of pirates, p and p. How about here in verse number 6, played with my puzzle, more p's. And how about the sea that it sails on? You might have found some others, but these are 3 examples of alliteration. So you highlight them right there. And then that last piece, what is the theme of this? Well, you could pull out your theme topics, and if you scroll down, you might see overcoming adversity. Adversity means, problems. So overcoming adversity. Maybe the theme or message could be something like, sometimes we have to make the best of a bad situation. Now, I know that that could be the theme because the speaker in this poem doesn't quite know what to do about this, and he asks his dad, and his dad's advice is, put it together, the world's like that too. So sometimes things aren't perfect, but we need to make the best of them and still enjoy them. So I think that that's evidence of the theme. Sometimes we have to make the best of a bad situation. So what I want you to remember here is never read poetry fast. NRPF. Use those steps with each poem that we do over the next few class periods. Thanks. I hope you now know how to read a poem.